Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my first Boruto anime review. Full title for the show is Boruto Next Generations, I believe. This is for episode 1, Uzumaki Boruto. So yeah, we're finally starting some new content with our new main character. Naruto's still here, of course, but definitely interesting to see how they started this here. In that, okay, we knew for a few weeks now it was going to be set prior to the Boruto movie, and they were going to basically start it off with Boruto and the others entering the academy, which is something we haven't really seen before, and it means that we're going to get more or less the full story of Boruto, whereas like what we have so far through the movie, chapter 700, the Gaiden, and what the manga has covered so far, has definitely been kind of like scattered important notes, whereas this really feels like it's going to be a continuous, stream, like original Naruto, of just following Boruto's journey from the day he enters the academy, which is the same thing that happened with Naruto. But obviously it's a very different journey for Boruto here, because obviously the world is at peace. There's not as much of a need for ninjas anymore, and so you have characters like Boruto who are kind of just like, okay, I learned these skills, but I don't really care all that much about being a ninja. You have characters like Denki, who kind of just wants to study and doesn't really want to do ninjutsu like his father wants him to do, but in the end sees how kind of cool it is, and through his friendship with Boruto actually wants to. So it's a new dynamic that's going on here, whereas I think in the past, like, everyone, like, it was just the default thing, you become a ninja because the world is, there's some conflict there and it's needed. Here it's like, it's this continuing the tradition of the Leaf Village, of being a ninja village, but there's so much other stuff going on that it's not necessarily the only path for you. Seeing like it start off with Boruto and Shikadai, basically, going to get those special burgers on the train, reflecting on how much technology there is and the fact that it's the Ninja Academy isn't as important anymore. It's kind of old fashioned in a way. That's the way they see it. The whole ninja thing is old fashioned compared to how technologically advanced things are. This is the sort of world building stuff that we need for like where the Naruto universe is at this point in time. Like, it's not crazy far from like the end of the manga and original Naruto and anime, but it's enough that like, okay, like big changes are happening. We have like big companies in Konoha and important families that own a lot of these kind of technology kind of industries. And so yeah, like I actually really like the idea of introducing this new character, Denki, who is presented to us initially just as a weakling who has a lot of money, but from a wealthy family, and Boruto just kind of standing up for him. And it's not necessarily in the same way that kind of Naruto stands up for people. He's just kind of like, okay, I don't really like people being bullied, but I'm just gonna like arrive and basically ask you to be tougher. He doesn't really inspire people in the same way that Naruto does, like through like hard work. He just kind of is like, I'm skilled, I'm gonna step in here, do some cool stuff and help you, but I'm not gonna like show you the path or kind of lecture to you about the right way to be. He's just kind of like, get tougher if you want. And Denki ends up responding to that, and the whole plot of this episode is effectively that Denki, having talked to Boruto, takes on a bit of Boruto's kind of personality with regards to how he feels about his father. Like, I think that's a big part of this episode, that we're dealing with this thing, obviously from the Boruto movie that was primarily presented, that Boruto doesn't feel too highly about Naruto because he spent so much time away from the family and isn't at home all that much, and in a way he never gets scolded by Naruto, and that's kind of what he wants. And so he kind of feels very down about that, and the whole Hokage position. I suppose ninja stuff in general, it's keeping him away from the family. And he kind of presents that to Denki, like, if your father wants you to do this, just teach him a lesson, disagree with him and go against him. And when he tries to do that to kind of fight his case that he wants to study this, his father's just like, no, the only way I'll let you study what you want is if you become powerful enough to defend yourself. Then you can study what you want because you'll be have earned it. And we get some of the interesting parts of this episode in terms of setup for the future. he kind of gets possessed by some sort of a snake spirit. Like it eventually reminds you somewhat of Orochimaru because of the snake stuff, but then like we haven't seen Mitsuki yet, and so is this a setup for Mitsuki relating to that one shot like Mitsuki chapter that we got a while back? Is it something related to that, or what? Just those experiments that Orochimaru is doing. But either way, it seems to latch on to the fact that he wants power and needs it quick, and this spirit seems to just emphasize that and latch on to the fact that he needs to become powerful, and so he basically lures the bullies that were bullying him onto a train, which is a prototype of the trains that his family's company makes, and basically plans to kill them, and it seems like the spirit plans to kill him as well by smashing two trains on opposite sides into each other. Boruto, obviously on his way to the academy for his first day at the academy for the attendance ceremony, hops on the train to get like a free ride to school basically, and this is where the core action of the episode takes place. It was definitely an interesting one to see kind of all these kind of young characters interact together. That Boruto we begin to see just prior to this and on the train, him activating what seems to be either the Byakugan or more likely, just based on if you really look at a screenshot up close of the eye power he activates in his right eye, it looks more like the Tensaigan than it does the Byakugan, but it could just be the way the animation is done. But if they're trying to make Boruto special, the Tensaigan is definitely, I think, the way to make him more unique, and especially with the fact that it kind of comes in and out depending on if there's like a ominous like threat around, is very interesting. But also we should note that this is the first time we've ever really seen this outside of the first chapter of the Boruto manga, where we also got the flash forward Boruto versus Kawaki scene where we knew he had some sort of an eye power, but because of the manga and the colors, it wasn't particularly clear if it was Byakugan or Tensaigan. This in the animation makes it a little clearer about that, but also seems to confirm that it's not a transplanted eye like it kind of looked like, because older Boruto has the scar on his eye. So a lot of interesting kind of reveals here. So I think it was actually a little bit of a surprise to me that we actually got the first scene from the Boruto manga here in the anime, but then followed it up with a different part of his story. It's just it is overall a little weird how all the Boruto kind of content is like being given out to us, in that like our first Boruto content was chapter 700, then we get the Boruto movie, then we get the Boruto manga, which starts off with a new scene, then adapts the movie, and is now going into new content post the movie. Now we start the anime and we get the same flash forward scene, but we're now starting the time period of Boruto like in the lead up to the movie basically. So it's weird how everything's kind of being played in that way. But it's still definitely fun. And the core of what happens here is that it seems like Boruto's influence, and maybe to some degree the power of the Tensaigan, seems to remove the spirit from Denki. I think it is more Boruto's influence though than necessarily the power. It seems like he just through force of will snapped himself out of it, had his big proving moment where he caught Boruto, and Boruto used the shadow clones to change the lines on the tracks, and then the bullies actually helped Boruto and Denki back into the train, and it was just a moment of, I suppose, friendship building, that even though they were at odds with each other earlier on, they actually came together in this kind of, big moment at the end, and the whole bully, person being bullied dynamic is not a thing anymore, and maybe they'll be somewhat, minor friends of Boruto and Denki in the background. But the scene is definitely more important, I think, for Denki than it is for Boruto, just because it is the moment where he realizes that he wants to learn ninjutsu as well. He does want to become more powerful, but he actually just is honestly interested in ninjutsu now. But the result of this whole thing is that Boruto and Denki, still on the runaway train, basically get it off the tracks and shoot it basically over the village into the side of the Naruto statue on the mountainside, with the face, the statue of Naruto's face on the mountainside, breaks off the top corner of his head, mainly his hair, and it's basically Boruto's big entrance into the academy, that he is there for the roll call just a little late, but more or less on time. And it's this big moment of like, okay, he's had a cool entrance. And Naruto, you could sort of tell when Naruto realized it was Boruto that he was kind of like somewhat impressed that Boruto managed to play this off, but it was also kind of like, why couldn't he just like walk here normally? And I like that especially come the end of the episode where Shikamaru reports that actually Denki's father doesn't have any issues. He's actually just happy that he's going to pay for all the damages to the village, and he's just actually happy that Boruto had an influence on his son and is changing him for the better. And I suppose Naruto is just happy that his son is having that influence that Naruto kind of had on other people, just in a slightly different way. And just seeing Naruto smile at the end and not really be annoyed at Boruto was a nice little thing to see. But we'll see where they go with the development of that relationship at this earlier point going forward. So it seems like Boruto takes all the heat for this, even though technically it was Denki's fault. He gets suspended for like the first week of the academy, but then comes back, and they seem to establish that perhaps like Sarada and Chocho don't really know Boruto all that well at this point in time, or else they're just kind of like, oh, he's just a troublemaker, let's just ignore him. So I found that interesting that they didn't immediately really seem to establish that Sarada and Boruto like knew each other super well. So I'm assuming that it's going to be more of an interesting dynamic when they're put into teams, and it's going to be one of the first times that Sarada and Boruto like properly get to know each other, perhaps. But again, I think this is all stuff that still needs to be developed, still needs to be presented to us, of course. But definitely, like I think that's a lot of the pluses that we have here, in that like a lot of the content that we've had already has kind of just more already established that Boruto like knows everyone. He knows all the other kids of the Naruto characters. Here, we're probably going to get the origins of like how close he is with each of them, and that like Inojin is in the episode 2 preview, so it looks like that character is probably going to have we're going to get that relationship established a little bit more. But yeah, I'm pretty pleasantly surprised with this episode. I liked that they committed to showing that flash forward moment, that like eventually the series will get to a point where something big happens, whether it be Boruto trying to avert the future of what happens with Kawaki and him being forced to be effectively one of the last ninjas, and establishing that what we're getting in the anime right now is kind of Boruto from the future telling the story of his past and how he came from not really liking the idea of ninjas to kind of being the last bastion for ninjas in the world against Kawaki. So I like that as a kind of huge setup into the future. I like the Tensaigon Byakugan tease, the setup of the potential villain of this arc being the snake kind of spirit type thing infecting Denki. And Denki, I think, could be an interesting character if he's kind of the focus of this first arc. Though I suppose there'll be some explaining to do with regards to like why he wasn't in the Boruto movie, or why we haven't really seen much of him since. But definitely, I was very happy with this episode. I think the animation was really good, but obviously don't expect this every episode because it is a weekly series that's going to be ongoing for a long time. The animation quality is going to go up and down depending on the importance of the events happening. But yeah, I think overall I'm very pleased with Boruto. I'm really excited to have this as a weekly thing now, and for sure I'm going to be continuing to review this every week. So definitely subscribe if you want to get the weekly Boruto anime reviews. But yeah, in the comments let me know what your thoughts were on the episode and my review. But that's been the video for today. Thanks for watching, and bye.